The living room of the Spencer Logan household glowed with soft candlelight as Hope adjusted the floral centerpiece on the dining table. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Fresh flowers, premium wine glasses, the faint aroma of gourmet cuisine wafting from the kitchen. This was the third intimate family gathering in 2 weeks, and Hope had orchestrated every detail with meticulous precision. "Looks amazing, darling," Liam called out from the kitchen doorway, his smile reaching his eyes in that practiced way that had become increasingly familiar over recent days. He crossed the room and placed a gentle hand on Hope's shoulder, squeezing it with a tenderness that felt more obligatory than spontaneous. Hope turned to acknowledge him, her own smile firmly in place. "Thank you. I think everyone will really enjoy it tonight. Beth is so excited to have Grandma Brooke and Grandma Ridge joining us." As she spoke, her words were confident and warm, the exact words of a wife celebrating her marriage. Yet beneath the performance, something unspoken hung in the air between them. It was the kind of silence that fills the gap when two people are no longer entirely sure why they're in the same room. The reunion that changed everything. Just weeks later, Hope and Liam had rekindled their romance after months of painful separation. The reconciliation had seemed miraculous to their families. After years of navigating their complicated history, the false starts, the interruptions, the times when circumstances pulled them apart, they had finally found their way back to one another. The wedding was intimate, beautiful, filled with promise and renewal. But something fundamental had shifted since that joyful day. The passion that should have followed the vow seemed to have been replaced by something more fragile, a mutual agreement to maintain appearances rather than genuine connection. "The table looks spectacular," Liam said again, his voice softer now. "You've outdone yourself, Hope." Hope's response was automatic. "I just want everything to be perfect. For us, for the family." The phrase hung between them like a question mark that neither had the courage to voice. Cracks in the foundation. It started 3 days ago when Hope's mother, Brooke, had mentioned Carter's upcoming wedding during a lunch conversation. The moment his name was spoken aloud, Hope felt something inside her freeze. She had masked it quickly, a brief pause in conversation. A sip of water, but Liam noticed. He always noticed now, as if he was constantly watching for signs of fractures in the structure they had so carefully rebuilt. "Carter's marrying Daphne next month," Brooke had said casually, unaware of the invisible tension that suddenly filled the room. "I'm sure you and Liam will be together there. How wonderful it must be to celebrate other people's happiness when you've just found your own again." The words are innocent enough, but they triggered something in Hope. She thought of Carter, solid, dependable Carter, and the moment when everything between them had shifted into something undefined. Liam had been dying, or so they'd all believe. In the face of that devastating reality, Carter had stepped up, offering Hope something that looked like love, something that felt like certainty when everything else was crumbling. Then Liam lived. Grace's experimental treatment worked miracles. And just like that, Hope was faced with an impossible choice that in the end wasn't hers to make. Liam's recovery had rewritten the narrative. His survival had written the ending. And she had convinced herself that she was happy about it. "I hope it's a beautiful wedding," Hope had told Brooke, but even as she spoke, her mind had drifted to Carter in a white tuxedo, standing at an altar waiting for a bride who looked at him with the same polite affection that Hope now directed at Liam. The performance deepens. Tonight, as their families arrived for dinner, Hope threw herself into the role of the devoted wife with a dedication that bordered on theatrical. She laughed at all of Liam's jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. She reached for his hand frequently, ensuring that anyone observing would see only a woman content with her choices. She rested her head on his shoulder during conversation, played with his hair in moments of mock intimacy, and called him darling more often than she had since their honeymoon in Italy. But Liam could see through it. As the evening progressed, his efforts to bridge the gap between them became more pronounced. He pulled her chair closer to his. He wrapped his arm around her waist during dinner. He looked at her with an intensity that felt almost desperate, as if he was trying to convince both of them that what they had built together was real. "Hope, remember when we talked about taking that trip to Cabo?" Liam asked suddenly, addressing the table but clearly speaking to his wife. "I've been thinking we should make it happen soon. Just the two of us. I want to create more beautiful memories with you." It was a kind gesture. It was also a performance designed to send a message to everyone present times. "Look how much I love her. Look how strong our marriage is." Hope smiled. "That sounds wonderful. We really should start planning it. But she was already mentally calculating how many events were scheduled before then, how many family obligations would require her presence, how many moments she would need to stage manage to maintain this facade. Brooke, sitting across the table, watched her daughter with a mother's intuition. She had raised Hope to be many things: strong, independent, principled, but not necessarily to be this. Not to be performing at her own dinner table. Not to be manufacturing happiness while sitting beside the man she had supposedly chosen to spend her life with. The weight of unspoken truths. After dinner, as Liam walked his in-laws to the door, Hope retreated to the kitchen under the guise of clearing dishes. She stood there alone in the soft glow of the appliances and let the mask slip for just a moment. Her shoulders dropped. Her practiced smile faded. For a few seconds she allowed herself to simply exist without performing. When Liam found her there rinsing glasses, she quickly straightened her posture. "You okay?" he asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Of course," Hope replied immediately. "Just tired." It was a great evening, though. Liam's arms tightened around her. "I love you, Hope. I know things have been different lately. But I love you, and I think if we keep trying, if we keep showing up for each other, everything will work out." The words were sincere. That was the tragic part. Liam genuinely believed them. He genuinely believed that performance and effort could transform whatever was happening inside them into authentic love, and Hope wanted to believe it too. She wanted to believe that their reconciliation had been based on something deeper than obligation, something more powerful than the instinct to keep a family together. Something authentic enough to last beyond the carefully arranged dinner parties and the strategically placed hand-holding. The heart of the matter. But beneath all the performance, beneath the forced laughter and the manufactured affection, there lived an uncomfortable truth that neither of them had dared to articulate. They had gotten back together for all the right reasons and all the wrong reasons, simultaneously. They had reunited because they still cared about each other, because they shared a history that couldn't be erased, because they had children whose stability mattered. But they had also reunited because it was the expected narrative, because their families wanted it. Because the alternative, admitting that sometimes people who love each other aren't meant to be together, was too devastating to contemplate. When Hope heard Carter's name now, she didn't feel a jolt of romantic longing. That would have been simpler, more manageable. What she felt instead was a phantom sensation of what if. A gentle reminder that there had been a moment, brief and crystalline, when another path had seemed possible. Carter represented the road not taken, the choice she hadn't been allowed to make. And Liam, for his part, could sense this. He could feel the emotional distance even as Hope's physical body remained close to his. He had won her back through the accident of his own recovery, not through the strength of their connection. Somewhere deep down he understood that Hope was a devoted wife going through the motions rather than a happy one. And that knowledge made him cling harder, try harder. To perform harder, which only made the atmosphere between them feel more suffocating. The facade holds. For now. As the night deepened and the house grew quiet, Hope and Liam lay in bed together. She was curled against his chest, her head in the practiced position that fit perfectly against his shoulder. His arm was around her, his breathing gradually evening out as he drifted towards sleep. To anyone observing them, they looked like a couple at peace. Hope stared out into the darkness of the room, awake and thinking. Tomorrow there would be more performances. There would be a family lunch where she would smile at appropriate moments. There would be a business meeting where she would pretend that the conflict between her mother Brooke and her Aunt Katie wasn't tearing her apart. And when she returned home, there would be Liam waiting, hopeful, trying harder than ever to bridge a gap that neither of them had the courage to properly acknowledge. The parties would continue. The hand-holding would persist. The forced laughter would echo through their beautiful home. And on the surface, Hope and Liam Spencer would look like the perfect reconciliation story, two people who had found their way back to each other against all odds. But underneath it all, in the quiet moments when the performance finally stopped, both of them would know the truth. They were actors in a production of their own design, playing the roles of devoted spouses because the alternative seemed impossible. They were holding on to each other not because they were certain about their future together, but because they were terrified of what would happen if they let go. The mask would hold. Love demanded nothing less.